Okay, today is lesson 4 for year 9 business. Please make sure you've got your workbook at the same time, and we're going to go over today ownership and liability, but of a private limited company. Yesterday, or whenever you last looked at lesson 3, we looked at partnerships. So who owns a partnership business? Who controls a business? What type of liability is there? What is one advantage of a partnership, and what is a disadvantage of a partnership? So I'd like you to press pause and try and answer those questions. If you can't remember, have a look at your notes from the workbook or the last partnership PowerPoint. So who owns the business of a partnership? It will be all the partners who have put money in. Who controls a business? It will be the partners. What type of liability is there? It will be unliability unless they have limited liability in their deed of partnership. What is an advantage of a partnership? I've written a few down here just so you can check. So hopefully you've got one of these. It's easy and cheap to set up. Financial information is kept private. Profit shared between the owners. The workload can also be shared because you're going to have more partners to share it. Each owner may have specialist skills to help the business. Do you remember I said about the vets? They might have a specialist in farm animals. You might have in the solicitors, you might have people who are more skilled in family law compared to buying a house, compared to criminal law. And what is the disadvantage of a partnership? Partnerships may not agree, so then you have to come to some agreement when you're in a partnership. There's a limit to the capital invested. Because of the fact that maximum 20 members are allowed, the business may find it difficult to expand after a certain limit. Partnership is also dissolved, which means that it no longer exists if one of the partners dies or resigns or becomes bankrupt. So today we are going to do private limited companies. That is to understand what a private limited company is, and then what are the advantages and disadvantages of a private limited company. So just to know just the words that you need to know for this lesson, we've gone over liability, we've gone over bankrupt, we've done unlimited liability before, limited liability. Private limited company is a new term. So this is usually a small family business in which shareholders enjoy limited liability, and we know what that is. It's the words above. And also a dividend is a sum of money paid usually every year by a company to its shareholders out of its profits. Just to note, if there's losses, there won't be a dividend to pay. So what do you think these companies have in common, and do you know any of them? So let's have a look. IKEA is I'm not going to say what it is. Raleigh, do you know Raleigh? Iceland, have you heard of that? New Look and Harrods. Do you know what Harrods is? Okay, so I want you to pause, think about if you know any of the companies and what do they have in common. If you can research them, have a quick research on Google and see if you know any of them. Let's have a little bit of information about these companies. So IKEA is a massive Swedish furniture company. It's owned by Ingar Kamprad, I think that's how you say his name, who is a founder of IKEA, plus also some other board of directors. Raleigh is a British cycle company. It's a limited liability company. Iceland, you must have heard of Iceland. Frozen food supermarket, and Malcolm Walker completed a successful buyout costing 1.4 billion with the management, so board of directors. That happened fairly recently. New Look is a fashion retailer privately owned by founder Tom Singh and chief executive Paul Wrigley, and a private equity investor as well. Harrods is a very posh department store in Knightsbridge, and that is owned by the Qatari royal family. So just what they've got in common is that they're all private limited companies, and just write some information about them in your workbook. So, key points that you need to know. And usually, a private limited company is set up by people who know each other. It issues shares to the people who have put money in. And limited stands for limited liability, which means if the company runs into debt, the amount the shareholders can lose is limited to the money that they have invested. And just also note that you have to have limited after your name. And below is a few more pointers about private limited companies, which I'd advise you to have a read about. So a bit more information about them. It has special status in the eyes of the law. These companies are incorporated, which means they have our own legal identity, and they can own assets. Assets are things like buildings in their own right. The ownership of a limited company is divided into equal parts, which is called shares. Whoever owns one or more of these is called a shareholder, and from a shareholder, if there are profits, you will get dividends, and dividends is part of the profit. Because limited companies have their own legal identity, their owners are not personally liable for their firm's debts, which is unlike a sole trader or a partnership. The shareholders have limited liability, which is a major advantage of this type of legal structure. And just one other thing to note, unlike a sole trader or a partnership, the owners of a limited company are not necessarily involved in running the business, but there will be an elected board of directors who do run the business. So I'd like you to complete the table below and think about the features a private limited company have. Are these features advantages or disadvantages? I want you to think about that. Some could be both. So who puts money into the business? Who decides if the business grows? Are the shareholders responsible for the company's debt? Does the company have to have limited after its name? Are the profits shared? So I want you to think about that. Press pause, have a look at your notes from before on the PowerPoint or on your workbook and see if you can do that. Thank you. So here we go, here are the answers. So who puts money in a business? Family and friends buy shares. Who decides if the business grows? An elected board of directors will do this. Are the shareholders responsible for the company's debt? They're only responsible for the amount they put into the company because it is a limited liability company. Does the company have to have limited after its name? Yes, it does. Name some large private limited companies. So Virgin, which is a limited company, believe it or not. Harrods, as we discussed earlier. Eddie Stobbard is a massive haulage company. They are a limited company, private limited company. New Look and River Island. River Island is also a closed company. How the profit shared? Shareholders are paid a dividend, and we discussed what dividend is earlier. Go back to the words that you might need for the PowerPoint. I think it's slide 4 or 5. Okay. So now what I want you to do is think about the advantages and disadvantages of being a private limited company. So are the accounts private or public, do you think? Do you think that's an advantage or a disadvantage? Will there be specialist skills in that private limited company? Will they have to hire people with those specialist skills? Will decisions take longer? There's going to be a board of directors who make decisions. Do you think that is going to be longer than a sole trader or a partnership, or not as long? Who makes the decisions? Is there a managing director, or is it the board of directors all have to make the decision for a company to expand or actually decrease? How's the capital and money raised? Can you remember about the shareholders? Have a look at that. And how is the profit shared? The key word there is dividend. And what about the amount of staff that company have for holiday and staff illness to cover the workload of the company? And think about this again, limited liability, and think about advantage and disadvantages to that. So the workbook again is the main activity, which some of it we followed, and then there's a little bit more for you to do. There is also a a YouTube BBC clip which might help you if you have got internet access, and there's also another question for you to do after that. So hope you've got all the information there for about a private limited company. If you haven't and you want more information, or you don't know how to answer a question, please email me on lshelton@carshortongirls.org.uk. Thank you.